All right. So,
All right.
are we?
Yeah, I think we're on.
I'm watching until we're
Guys,
live.
if you guys can tell us how the audio is. Testing.
Everyone say
Hello.
testing. Hello.
Hey,
testing.
hi Mike. Hi Moose.
Hello.
Hi, Stephen. Stephen or Stephen?
Yeah, man. We got a rock star on today.
Oh, Abdullah is already on the live chat. Yeah. Okay.
There you go. Oh, hey, I can see everybody on the live chat. Okay, good.
Okay.
Okay. Now, first, I'm gonna mute.
Sorry about the 7-minute delay. We were having some technical difficulties with Skype.
Mm-hmm.
But we fixed it.
Skype. Yeah, Skype's a bitch. All right. I'm gonna start now. Okay.
Oh, hi. Oh, Kirill is in the live chat. Reason on Faith is also in the live chat. Kirill just did, by the way, let's just give a shout out to... No, wait. No, that's a different... Is that the same Kirill?
Yeah, okay, listen. You're talking about Killian?
Oh, yeah, Killian.
Oh my God, Armin, you're so racist. Okay, anyway.
White people, they all look the same too.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Especially with their names start with the K. Okay, anyway.
Kirill, I know... okay, so I know I'm going to give a different shout out. Kirill, we did the Patreon meeting with Kirill.
I was on that too, I remember.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi, and with us, with me, we have a very frazzled Armin Nabavi, because this podcast almost didn't happen thanks to a Skype glitch. Armin, are you okay?
I'll recover.
You'll recover? Okay, just take a deep breath. Take a deep breath.
I need Sam Harris's new app, but it's not on Android yet. We Android people are constantly discriminated against.
Yeah, you need to get a Mac. Anyway, so okay, so I'm like super excited about today's episode because I've been trying to get this guy on for a very long time. So I'm going to embarrass you a little bit. I'm talking to my guest. You're kind of a hero of mine. I think that some of the stuff that you've been doing recently has been incredibly inspiring, and the way that you're going about your dialogue is amazing. We've got with us, okay, I should probably introduce you. We've got with us Abdullah Sameer. Abdullah Sameer is an increasingly popular and influential atheist writer and YouTuber who was once a very religious Muslim. He preached Islam for about 15 years and even founded really popular Islamic websites like Light Upon Light and Verse by Verse Quran. In 2016, Abdullah, you made a video announcing that you had left Islam, and the video was fairly controversial and got now it's nearing 1 million views on YouTube, and he's got tens of thousands of YouTube subscribers in just a very short time, and we're going to actually touch on a lot of stuff in this podcast. At least I want to. Mm-hmm. But again, Abdullah, I think that I told the other Abdullah Gondal when he was here that you guys really are, I think, the future, the way that this whole movement's going. And the other thing is, like, when we interviewed the other Abdullah, he was also banned from Facebook, and right now I'm hearing you're banned from Facebook, right?
Wait, you're banned from Facebook?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh,
how did you get banned? You're so, like, the way that you write is so thoughtful, and what
yes. So thank you so much, guys, for having me on, and for your over the top kind words. Really, really honored to hear that and appreciate it. What I'm doing, obviously, it comes from the bottom of my heart. Right? It's a very sincere and thoughtful kind of, what I'm doing. It's very sincere, and I think that comes out. It comes across when when you talk to people. So I do appreciate the kind words. What happened was, honestly, I don't think anyone reported my post, but I had a post called Abdullah Sameer's Bigot Test. And I had a few examples of how to spot a bigot. So based on my kind of experiences, discussing with Muslims, ex-Muslims, atheists of all sorts, even Christians and other people that kind of I've been discussing with, there's a few common kind of criteria which someone that's trying to throw all Muslims under the bus tends to have, and some of the things they say. And so what happened was, one of the things I said was, Muslims are rapists, right? And that was on the list. So, ISIS is true Islam.
Now this is going to get demonetized, and this video is going to get great. Now this video,
so what happened was,
YouTube video is going to get reported. Okay, go on.
Yeah.
So what happened was, I got flagged because even though I wasn't saying that, a bot could have interpreted it as I was saying Muslims are bad people. Right. Whereas what I was trying to say was, these are some things that people say which are over the top And if someone is saying this, I question the motives, basically something like that, right? And it was...
Oh, so yeah, it's like that guy.
We should go report like History Channel's like coverage of like Nazi Germany, and be like, this is Nazi propaganda, because obviously they have like Hitler's speech and stuff right there. So basically, based on the standards that we have now, all of those could be considered racist, or I don't know. Like,
yeah,
I don't think that social media has not been able to yet figure out how to look at the context where we're discussing these things, right?
Yeah. And I think, like I said, I think it was just a bot that flagged me, but I did ask for a manual review, and somehow I even failed that. So even the person reviewing is probably someone working in Philippines, according to one little snippet of a documentary that's coming out about Facebook and the people that screened the posts. And I don't think they even understood what I was writing about, because they said, no, this is actually hate speech. So I guess,
there's a documentary coming out?
Yeah, about the screeners. I forget what they're called, the sweepers or something like that.
That's racist towards Filipino people. Do you think Filipino people
they were the ones kind of featured in the film. So there could be other people working there too, but that's what they were kind of showing.
Right.
Wow. So anyway, we hope you're back soon, and we're going to try to do whatever we can to get you back on.
Did you mention how influential Abdullah was, like, as a Muslim? I was reading the live chat. Did you mention?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
I did.
Okay, you did.
We did the whole introduction.
Okay.
But
I don't introductions.
Yeah, but so I want to start, Abdullah, with, so you've got a really interesting background.
Yeah.
And so you were born into a family. You were born in Kenya, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Kenya. Well, do you have your birth certificate? Oh no, I'm kidding. So you were born in Kenya. Your father is Ismaili, a Muslim, which is a subsect of Shia Islam.
Not really Muslim.
Yeah, no, not really. But your mother is Sunni, and it seems like you once you started getting into some of the Sunni practices when you were younger, and then you eventually veered from Ismailism towards Sunni Islam, and then you became a very religious Sunni Muslim, and then you gave that up, and you became an atheist. So can you lead us through that transition? How did you start from Ismailis, like a very sort of open and relative, they're pro-secular, they're pro,
Yeah.
So how did that happen?
So my family is very, I'm thankful for this now, that my family is very liberal. My mom and dad are really accepting and understanding. And so what happened was, I grew up, like you said, in this very liberal kind of religion that was very easygoing, doesn't put a lot of strain on you in your life, doesn't put a lot of demands on your, your schedule. For example, you pray early in the morning before, anyone wakes up, the dawn prayer, and then there's one after, like 7 o'clock or something, and it's fixed times, unlike the Islamic namaz, which is based on the sunrise and sunset. So everything's very convenient, very easygoing, and very liberal. There's, you should eat halal if you can, but like, again, there's not a lot of emphasis on stuff like that. There's no hijab. Like I said, you don't pray five times a day.
Even Ramadan, I think Ramadan is like, you just kind of choose. You don't necessarily. Because I went to the Aga Khan University, which is, the Aga Khan is the Imam of the Ismailis, and I had many Ismaili friends, and some of them, when they used to fast, they used to just say that, okay, I have a vice, I get angry, I'm just going to try to control my anger. That was their fast. So
yeah, I think there's many different, like, you'll find among Ismailis, some will like go all the way, they'll pray, they'll fast, no premarital intimacy. Like, for example, my parents' generation, that was really frowned upon, like living together before marriage. But from the religion itself, there's not a lot of emphasis on these things. Like, nobody says you must fast in Ramadan. Like, I've never heard that as an Ismaili. And so I was completely Ismaili. I was not like at all Sunni whatsoever until about the age of 18. Because, I went by my dad's religion, not my mom's. My mom was still Sunni, but not really religious.
Ismaili is a subset of Shiism, right? So
yeah, but even some Shias don't like to say that, because they consider Ismailis to be so out there.
Yeah.
But they consider themselves Shia Ismaili Muslims.
Right now, 12er Shias are the majority Shias, but the Ismailis were the original Shias that were in power in Egypt before the 12er Shias became popular.
Yeah, the Fatimid. Yeah, if you go back in history, the Fatimid Empire, I believe, was an Ismaili empire. So from there, what happened was, in my high school, in a public high school in Canada, I had some Sunni Muslim friends that were having a prayer and stuff. And so I decided to join them. And, I had a little bit of exposure from, doing the Eid namaz or the Eid prayer, the Eid salah. And I prayed sometimes with my Sunni family members, even though that wasn't the thing I normally did. And so I was comfortable and I just joined them. And I asked my dad. My dad was very easygoing. He's like, yeah, however you want to worship God, if you want to pray with them, that's fine. So then as I started to to do the Sunni way of the Sunni thing, I felt more comfortable with it. I felt like this is more in line with the religious doctrine, the Quran itself. And I felt more and more that Ismailism was too far removed from the Quran. That's what I felt. And to be frank, like the main thing about praying to Aga Khan, or what they call Mola Bapa, to me it seemed like that goes yeah, exactly. I mean, it goes completely against the thesis of the Quran, which is to pray directly to Allah.
Tawheed,
so from my
against
perspective.
Tawheed. It's the most fundamental part of Islam, right?
Yeah, I mean, and with respect for Ismailis, they don't look at it in that literal way. They look at it a different way. They say that, anyways, I'm not going to justify from their perspective, but they have their perspective to it, like, whatever it is, however they justify.
So I wanted to ask you just one thing really quick before we go on is, with Ismailism, I know that Ismailis are, so just to, my wife is actually from the Ismaili sect as well. And I mean, she's an atheist, but there is an element of secrecy about their beliefs. Like, they're quiet about it because, if, for example, in Pakistan, they could be subject to a lot of attacks when people find out how far removed they are, and they would consider them apostates and heretics. So how open are you now when people ask you about Ismailism? Do you speak about their beliefs in public, or are you concerned about their security?
No. I think that's a historical kind of thing that still exists in the Ismaili religion. Because they were historically oppressed, there's some rules in the religion that only, for example, Ismailis can go into the Jamaat Khana, right? The mosque. But like, for example, and technically you're not supposed to share the farman, the sayings of Maula Bapa or Aga Khan with the non-Ismailis. But I have no issue talking about Ismailism. The only thing is that
you guys are the original assassins.
Yeah, the assassins were Ismaili as well.
Right.
Okay, you can't drop that without explaining it. So Abdullah, go ahead and explain that. Hussein.
Yeah, there was a historical
word
set
Hussein,
of extreme Ismailis who went and they smashed the black rock of the Kaaba, of the holiest temple in Islam. So I don't know too much about the history there, but
but the word assassin comes from Ismaili sect. Like, you guys went and they had you guys had the first suicide missions, right? Because they made plans to. Yeah, no, it's true. The suicide, before there were bombs, there were suicide missions, and the Ismailis were the first suicide. People that basically the way it was a suicide is that they had the plan to go out assassinate a Sunni important figure, right? Like a Khalif or somebody else, like some scholars from Baghdad or whatever. But they made all the plans on how to get there and kill the person, but they just didn't make a plan on how to get out once the assassination was done. So it was technically a suicide mission, and that's how originally we had suicide missions in Islam. So it started with you guys.
So just to clarify one thing, so nobody gets the wrong idea, I am in no way Ismaili.
No,
I do not believe Aga Khan is a nur of Allah or anything like that. I don't believe in Ismailism any more than I believe in Sunni Islam.
Right.
One of the most quickest slanders, or the most common slanders I get against me, is this guy was never a true Muslim. He was Ismaili. But the reality is, I mean, I didn't talk about it much, but I was Sunni through and through. When I converted to Sunnism from Ismailism at around the age of 18 or so, I completely left Ismailism behind. And I became 100% Sunni. Like, I created a website, lightuponlight.com, to promote, my views and the Sunni religion, the Islamic religion, through Sunnism. Right. And I really much believed in it. I left Ismailism.
This is Light Upon Light, right? I think.
Yes, lightuponlight.com. No. The website's still up there. I kept it. I just kept it as a. Yeah. It's a kind of backup to prove that I am who I say I am. But people in real life who know me, they know who I am.
But I actually love the website, because when you go on it, and what's the URL? Lightuponlight.com? Or
yes.
Yeah, when you go on it, you see these pictures of all these Islamic videos, and then suddenly this pop-up comes up that says, I no longer run this. No, this website is no longer active. I've left Islam.
Yeah.
I just thought that was hilarious, because you go right to the Islamic website. It's like, oh, by the way, guys, sorry,
Yeah.
No longer functional. But yeah, so it definitely is still up. So I have a. Did you move to because Ismailis are, as Armin said, they're part of the Shia subsect. So
Yes.
You said that Ismailism you thought was too removed from the Quran. Did you explore ethnoshery Shiaism? Because that is a little bit closer than.
Yeah, true.
The 12 is that the Jafari?
12er, yeah.
The 12er.
Yeah,
Shias, yeah.
I think it was just happenstance for me. It's just my friends were Sunni, and so I was mainly, exposed to that point of view. And sometimes people ask me like, why did you, why did you deep dive into Islam? Like, how is it that now that you're leaving it, but at that time you were like, yeah, like Islam all the way, baby. It's because at that time I was a much less critical person than I am now. And I was willing to kind of accept it wholeheartedly. Like I kind of already had the religious indoctrination. I believed in God. I believed in Muhammad as a messenger. And I'm like, hey, the Quran's the final word of God. So the only issue I found was Ismailis are not following the Quran properly according to what I thought. So then I just wanted to adjust that. But I was already in the whole like religious thing. Right. So at that time I wasn't critical. But now.
Do you think, so what do you say to people that say, well, at least Ismailis are better than Sunni Muslims? Isn't that like something we should promote given that they're so moderate or liberal or so easygoing? Why not, like, if we want to have Islam, why not have Ismaili Islam instead of Sunni Islam? Let's just promote that.
One thing I actually thought about was like, why don't I just be like an agnostic Ismaili? Like, why do I want to be atheist? Like, why don't I keep that community? Because that community is there. There's a huge community backing.
Right.
And then I'm like, when I thought about it, I'm like, I just can't accept that I have to, like, this guy, the leader of Ismailism, the Ismailis pay him 12.5% of the gross wealth, 1/8. And this is like, you have to do this, right? Otherwise, like, something bad will happen to you, or, it's not good, right? It's not good, like. Right. It's not good for your karma, whatever, right? Anyway, so you have to do that.
I mean, he's very rich. I mean, he breeds racehorses. He lives in France. He's got, his university, the one that I went to, is one of the nicest campuses I've seen in the world.
They actually think that if you don't pay this 1/8, something bad is going to happen to you?
Well, I don't know exactly what the religion teaches, but I do know my dad actually told me that things go well in life, as long as you're paying this, and if you stop paying it, something bad can happen. I don't know, like maybe that's just like a superstitious thing, but it's definitely enforced. Like you need to do this, right? Of course, no one's checking that you're actually paying it, but there's people that even pay 25%. Now, money is not the only thing, right? It's more like you're accepting his leadership as a spiritual like leader of, I don't know. I just can't do it.
Like if you look at, he looks like a businessman. He's wearing suits, right? Like he looks like a huge billionaire with that's running business and charities. Like he doesn't look like a religious leader, does he? Right?
Well, his grandmother was Rita Hayworth, right? Rita Hayworth, like a Hollywood. His son is married to Kendra Spears. His daughter is she smokes, and she's been seen with a glass of. They're actually the family of him, and he is a documented descendant of Muhammad, right? But he is he's sort of. This is my understanding. My understanding, as I got it. And by the way, I've been to Jamal Khana many times. You know what you were saying about the community. The community is very strong and they're very supportive. And it's weird. My wife and I are both atheists, but whenever we go there's always food, and there's whenever they have the celebrations, they dance. So it's actually quite a lot of fun. And so you're right about the community aspect. But one thing that what they said was that he's. I've lost my train of thought.
Okay, I have something to say.
Go ahead.
So it's actually what you said was actually what I wanted to get at, because it's not just that your point, is not that it's less harmful. At the end of the day, it's nonsense. Like this is why I love ex-Ismailis, right? I think we have some in the live chat today as well, is because ex-Ismailis prove that your nonsense doesn't have to be the worst nonsense out there for it to be nonsense, right? People still look at their religion, and maybe it's not as harmful as fucking Wahhabi Islam or something like that, but it's still bullshit. And they're like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. I can't accept this. I'm going to leave it, right? So ex-Ismailis and other versions of Islam, ex-Sufis and stuff like that shows, like, it's a really good indication that as when something doesn't make sense, there are people that are still willing to leave it. And what you mentioned, that the money that people pay is still harm. This is money that people work hard and they're giving it to this fucking billionaire that doesn't need it. This is still harm, even though it's not maybe suicide bombers or like terrorist attacks or stuff like that. It's still harm, and it's worth tackling this. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I would say like you're right. It is harm. I mean, it's not to say that, one thing that Ismailis will always tell you is Aga Khan does a lot of charitable work, and it's true. Like, there's like hospitals and schools that he builds, and the Aga Khan Development Network has tons of charity all over the world, which doesn't justify, them saying that he has a religious authority to take 1/8 of everyone's wealth. Right. Of course, that doesn't justify. I'm not justifying. But what I'm saying is I do think there's different levels of harm, right? And I do think that a suicide bomber, that a jihadist and ISIS extremist is obviously a far, far, far worse for the world, and even Wahhabism, than like Ismailism. Ismailism is far less harmful to the world.
Right.
And even my own family members have said this. Like, I had one family member who I won't mention saying, I wish, like I have a younger brother who is still Sunni Muslim. And, I don't want to say who it is, but someone said, I wish you didn't make him, or you didn't guide him, or make him convert to Sunni. Because as an Ismaili, he'd be far better off than he is as a Sunni. Because the sacrifice is that much more. Like
but the point is that, but the point is that the harm that you're addressing doesn't have to be the worst harm in the world for it to be worth addressing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I think that's what Abdullah is saying. So he's saying that he doesn't believe in the divinity. He doesn't, and that's why he kind of left it, because he couldn't accept that he had to accept this guy as the divine leader. Right. But at the same time, so these things are complicated. And this is kind of true because, again, I went to the university I went to. The Aga Khan actually does do a lot of, he promotes secularism. He promotes separation of religion and state. He promotes the idea that people should keep their religion to themselves, forget about the political thing. And this is the interesting thing, Armin. So the Ismaili sect is probably the only one that has somehow found in its theology to put the Quran secondary. Because what they have...
That's not a good thing, though.
No. Listen, it's not a... It's not, of course, we've already agreed that at the top level it's not a good thing.
I just want to talk to the new people that are listening to our podcast that Ismaili, at the end of the day, is making Islam look good, and Islam does not deserve to look good. But go on.
Okay, so sure, that's fine. But what I'm saying is over here is it's an interesting way to, because in most of the other sects you don't have this. And Abdullah, correct me if I'm wrong, but what they have is you have a divine appointee of God on earth. And I'll give you the devil's advocate point of view in a bit too. But you have the divine appointee of Allah on earth, and he is right here. So if you want to ask about whether you should drink alcohol sometimes or occasionally, you don't have to wear hijab, you can have a Western lifestyle, he'll come out and he can tell you that. And his word is the divine word. So that makes a Quran sort of like a historical relic that is sort of respected, but it's not a primary source of how you live your life. You could do all
that without the Islam label. That's my problem.
Armin, that's right. But we're drawing a comparison.
I know. I'm just telling our new listeners. Yeah. Anyway,
no, that's fine. Yeah. But the devil's advocate point of view, right, is that this could go right. The fact that this Aga Khan just happens to be very, very progressive is in a way an accident, because there is another sect of Ismailis called the Bohras. They didn't happen to get a guy who was as good as this. So they practice FGM. They totally cover up their women. They're incredibly conservative and more like sort of traditional Sunni Islam. So it kind of got lucky, but this is probably the most progressive sect of Islam that's out there, thanks to the luck that this guy happens to be a little bit more progressive and pro-secular. Yeah. Doesn't mean he's right, as Armin said.
It's not even just this guy, but it was from the very original split when you had the Bohra and Ismaili split, and one of the brothers went one direction, which is like what you said, like more kind of like liberal, and the other brother went the conservative.
No, I was thinking of the band. Never mind, forget it.
Ali's a dad, so he makes dad
jokes.
Yeah.
That's why I make dad jokes. I make. Yeah, go ahead. Right. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So yeah, you're right in what you're saying. What you said about him being the kind of divine appointee I actually had a question to ask my dad where, they believe that, kind of like how the 12 Imams have knowledge of everything? This is kind of a Shia belief. And so Ismailis take that to even the living Imam. They call him the living Imam, and they believe that he has knowledge of everything. So I actually asked my dad, like when I was becoming Sunni, I said, why do you pray to him if he doesn't, like, how you really believe he knows everything? And my dad was like, yeah. So I'm like, okay, if we call him up on the phone right now, is he gonna know that my name? Like I was being like logical, right? Yeah. So I had a little bit of logic that I was trying to use back then, but I didn't.
You have to.
I didn't take it all the way.
Does he know about the mole that is growing on my ass or something? Like, does he know?
Yeah, no, I didn't say that.
But go on.
Yeah, no, so I was like kind of trying to be a little bit logical about it back then, but I just didn't see my way all the way through, like, out of Islam. But even back then I was thinking, like, what's the point? Even I was asking my dad, like, what's the point of praying to Allah and also praying to Aga Khan? Like, I didn't see the point of having kind of like two different people to pray to, because Ismailis, they ask him for help. They ask him for like blessings too, right? And then, my dad said, if you look at the sun is too bright, so you need like sunglasses. So Aga Khan, he's like the sunglasses to filter out the bright light or something. I don't know. He came up with some analogy.
Right,
but isn't it like, it's kind of like the Trinity though, in a way, because you have, you have God, who's a divine.
It's like
it is actually.
No, it's like the saints in the Catholic doctrine, and Sunnis are like the Protestant. They're saying like, what the fuck?
No, what I'm saying is like the Trinity in Ismailism, you have Allah, and then you have Ali, and you have the Imams, and all of them are the same kind of spirit. They're all the spirit of God, but they're divided among different elements, like the Trinity. So in the same way that how you're saying, you're praying to Aga Khan and you're praying to God, it's kind of, you talk to Jesus, you pray to Jesus, but you also pray to God, right? Is it something like that? Or
yeah, Jesus is a good analogy, I feel, because again, it's like he's somehow connected to Allah and something like that. Yeah, there's some connection.
Can we, guys, we named this topic of this discussion how to talk to Muslims, right? So we need
we're getting to that. This is so interesting.
Yeah, but ended up being about Ismaili Islam. So can we, so your experience as a Sunni, does that help talk to Muslim because you were like, because like you being, would you say Islamic preacher? Would you say that that's what you were? Were you an Islamic preacher? Is that a good... Yeah. Wait, you got frozen. Abdullah? Yeah. Oh, no, go on. Abdullah? Did we lose Abdullah?
I think we might have lost him.
Oh, no. Fucking Skype. All right.
Okay, hold on. Let's get this timestamp. Guys, hold on. We're going to try to get Abdullah back.
All right. Let me see. Abdullah. This is the second Abdullah we have had. By the way, Abdullah means...
should we get... should I call him again? Or how do I...
Yeah, call him again.
Okay, but would I have to kick out the original one?
No, just add him to the
he's
call.
Already gone.
Add him to the call.
There we go. Yeah, we've been having like lots of Skype issues today for some reason.
Hey,
you're back. Okay, good. Okay, we're back on track. So.
Now I'm...
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, my Skype crashed. Skype is not behaving well.
Oh, no, it's not. Yeah, we know that today. There's something up with Skype.
So,
but yeah, Armin, can you repeat your question?
I forgot my question. Oh, like, so would you say you're an Islamic preacher? Would you say that?
Yeah, no. I was not an Islamic preacher by any means. I was someone that was a motivated, sincere Muslim. Let's put it like that. Someone that truly believed that Islam was the truth. I was an informal preacher in the sense that I did, Friday khutbahs at universities and even at the Musalla, like a small mosque downtown. I did stuff like that, but I wouldn't call myself a preacher because that wasn't my job. I was a family man, I had my family, and on the side, however I could, I wanted to promote Islam. I used to be involved in dawah booths. So I used to have a booth I used to go to on the weekend.
Explain that. What is that to people?
Dawah is to call people to Islam, to preach Islam, basically. So I was involved in that process, giving out pamphlets.
Did you ever convert anyone to Islam?
I made a lot of Muslims religious. So I can give you tons of stories of Muslims that were not religious. And because of me, including my brother, my younger brother, and a lot of my family members, my wife as well became more religious because of me. at the time.
But did you make any non-Muslim a Muslim?
No, I don't think so.
So
unless
you've been more
through my website.
Have you made, so as an ex-Muslim now, have you made any Muslim and non-Muslim?
You can say very much so. So
Wow,
I've started keeping track because I got a lot of people telling me.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So I made a list now of testimonies on my blog, and it's over. I think it's around, I don't know, around 30 now. So I still have to update the list because a few people told me I can add them, and I haven't added them yet. And these are just people that have directly contacted me and said, you specifically helped me to leave Islam.
Nice.
But like it's actually more than that, because a lot of people don't contact me. Right? A lot of people don't even know that I can be contacted. Right? They just see my video, or maybe they heard about me, or someone sent them my WhatsApp of one of my videos or something. But yeah, so far there's already 30 people. So I'm more successful as an atheist than as a Muslim. I don't know.
And in the last time, I actually saw that blog
on
post.
Your side.
Yeah, I
have
saw that
on my side. That's true.
Yeah. But I saw that you have all these testimonials of people just writing to you and saying, "Oh, okay, yeah, no, thanks to you, now I'm an ex-Muslim, or I've left Islam because of you." So it's actually really. We're going to link to that. I have that link to that blog, so we're going to link to it in the description. I made a note here. So
here's the question: is it easier to make a non-religious Muslim to a religious one than make two questions? First question, is it easier to make a non-religious Muslim to a religious one than to make a religious Muslim into a non-religious one? The question number one. Question number two, is it easier to make a religious Muslim to a non-religious one compared to making a religious Muslim to an ex-Muslim atheist?
Okay, I'm getting confused with all the Muslim.
Yeah, I'm really confused.
Let's do
too.
the first question first.
Okay, first question.
I don't know if it's easier or harder. It depends on each person, right? Like some people are successful with different things. I believe that, it was my sincerity. I think that it's anyone's sincerity. Anyone that has any sort of, if you really believe in something, that has an effect on people around you. When people see that you're making sacrifices and you're doing your very, very best to pray 5 times a day or whatever it is, that has an effect on people around you, right? Because they see and they want to know, why is he like that? And I think because of that sincerity is how it's the reason why I was able to leave Islam. Because as I was talking to people, eventually I got to a point where I was talking to someone who was like kind of giving me some points back to think about, and I'm like, hey, that's a good point. Let me look into that.
Who's that?
Because
Can you give a shout out to the person?
Sure. So the first time this happened, other than little tiny holes and little tiny doubts that happen here and there, the first big thing that happened was some guy online that was kind of like discussing on Facebook. And, people say Facebook debates don't work, but this guy was like, I almost converted to Islam. He was a Christian, Unitarian Christian or something. And then he's like, I did some research into it, and I found out a lot of the stories in the Quran are actually ancient Jewish myths. I'm like, yeah, I know. They're like from the Torah, and they're also revealed by God. He's like, no. He said, these stories are coming from the rabbis and from the Talmud, which is not considered like a revelation, right? Basically, they're like stories they would tell, and somehow they end up,
okay,
right?
okay.
Yes.
Then at that point, I started looking into it. And I'm like, whoa, what's up with that? And I'm like, no, I'm going to disprove this guy. I'm going to show him, because I believe I was on the truth, right?
Right.
And then as I looked into it, it was getting murkier and murkier. And I'm like, a lot of these stories do seem to be made up, right? And they do seem to have found their way into the Quran. And on top of it, the ones that found their way into the Quran were also in a language similar to the Quran, in Syriac, and in a time that was similar to the Quran. So it started off with the Jewish stories, and then like Cain and Abel and stuff. And then it became a bigger question of, like, for example, Alexander the Great or Dhul Qarnayn. And, the stories
the guy with the horns, right?
Yeah, Dhul Qarnayn, the two-horned guy, right?
Yeah.
And then it became like the infancy gospel. And how did that end up in the Quran? And how come that was also in Syriac, right? And so more and more I started to have trouble. I'm like, I don't know how to make sense out of this. But then I said, okay, you know what? I talked to some of my friends and said, just forget it. Don't let these doubts, misguide you. And so I shut it off. For one more full year, I became a Muslim. And then 1 year later, the doubts came back, because I was in Ramadan in the mosque, and the Imam was like, these scientists, they think they're so smart. And Allah says in the Quran, he holds up the sky without any pillars. And the Sheikh's name was Dawood Butt. And he basically made it he was making fun of science. And he was like, and then all these doubts came back to my mind. I'm like, whoa, this doesn't even sound like God is speaking. It sounds like some man wrote this, right?
Right.
And this was when I finally ended up leaving Islam, because at this point, I'm like, I can't deal with this doubts anymore, which I was blocking.
When was this? Was this in 2016 or around the time you made the video?
2015.
2015, yeah.
Yeah, July 2015. So it's 3 years ago. And at this point, I'm like, I have to find out. I have to know, because I was having these doubts, like serious doubts now. And I'm like, I have to look into it. And so I read everything I could find.
Right.
And then I'm like, okay, I'm not Muslim anymore. And that's when I started to come out on Facebook. And then eventually I made the blog. And then I think
Did you get any backlash? Of course.
So originally what happened was, first people were like, are you like doing like a social experiment or something? Like, how are you posting all these things about like, Islam, like negative things, right? Or like, questions or, issues. And then people started telling me, brother, this is not how you get help. You need to talk to an imam. Don't be posting your doubts online and spreading fitna in the community. You're causing trouble for people, right?
So you had a lot of your original Islamic followers who were still on your Facebook and everything.
My Muslim friends, not my Islamic, I wouldn't call them Islamic followers. I would call them my Muslim friends. And so my Muslim friends
That's what you called your Islamic followers. Okay. All right.
No, these are my friends.
Yeah, because at that time you didn't. You weren't a big YouTube.
No, I wasn't.
No, you were. You were.
Okay.
No, I mean, I had my Islamic website, but I didn't tell people I ran an Islamic website. Like nobody knew. My name wasn't on there. I didn't want any credit for it. I just did it, right? For like the sake of
you were a humble Muslim, just doing it for the sake of Allah. Right. Go ahead.
I didn't want to lose any good deeds, so I didn't want to tell anyone it was my website, right? Okay. Anyways, so
Right, go ahead.
Yeah, so when people started to see that, they were concerned about me. Some people actually, one guy, he's like, listen, I almost became atheist, and I solved the problems, and I became Muslim again. So at that point, I deleted all my Facebook posts. I'm like, okay, I'm going to solve my problems too. I don't want to misguide anybody else, whatever. I said, I'm going to meet this guy, and I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to find out how did he come back to Islam.
Right.
So I went and I met this guy, and I'm like, let's talk about this. And I had a list of all my questions. But at this point, I was still like poking holes in the Quran. I hadn't looked at the bigger picture, which was why believe in Islam in the first place. Like I hadn't shifted the burden of proof back to where it is.
Yeah.
I was more like, I have these problems with the Quran, right? And which is kind of like how it starts, right? But as you get deeper into it, like, whoa, wait a minute. Like what? How do I even know in the first place this is from God, right? Like never mind scientific errors in the Quran. Never mind like these things.
When did I start assuming that any of this is true anyways, right?
Yeah, like why even assume any of it is true, right? And then start from there. Now you tell me why it's true. That's how it should be, because anyways, that's called a burden of proof. I didn't know that. So I had some like basic issues at the time, and I asked him. And at the end of it, he basically answered some of them, and the rest of them he's like, I took a leap of faith. I didn't want to be wrong. I don't want to go to hell. So it was
his answer?
That was some of the things. He kind of gave me an explanation, like why did Muhammad do this? And he's like kind of came up with something to kind of make me feel better about it. But some of the questions he just couldn't answer. He's like, you know what? I contemplated deeply on it, and I decided it's not worth the risk. That's what he said. So Pascal's wager, basically, right?
Okay.
And so I'm like, okay, thanks. We talked for like hours. Like I was at his house, I don't know how many hours. And then I started posting on Facebook. He's like, I'm back, bitches. I'm like, you didn't solve my issues. I still have questions about these things. It's not even have questions about these things. These are the issues I found in Islam. It's not questions.
Right.
These are problems with Islam, right?
Yeah.
And so he's like, I don't want to go back to this again. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done with the doubts. I just want to be Muslim now, right? So I'm like, okay, don't worry, I won't bother you about it, right? But he kind of felt like I was being kind of like a nasty person, in the sense that I'm misguiding others and I'm pulling others into the same hole that I'm in. He saw it as a hole, right?
Right.
Yeah,
but one thing about this story which is very interesting is that a lot of atheists point to that you shouldn't poke holes in religion, because then you're putting the burden of proof on you. You should just let them prove their religion to you, and you should just sit back and say like, well, if you make a claim, you prove it to me. But psychologically, that doesn't usually work. Like I think what I've noticed is that it starts with you most of the time at least, it starts with you pointing something out that they're like, yeah, well, how is this? Why is this like this, right? I mean, it's true that the burden of proof is on them, and a lot of atheists like, no, don't. Why would you make a claim and put the burden of proof on you? You're at an advantage position. They're making the claim. They need to prove their claims, right? But psychologically, what I've noticed is that even though it's true that the burden of proof is on them, if you point to some things, that's how initially it starts, and then once you have a few seeds of doubt, then you go in with, well, how do you know the rest of it? They bring up the burden of proof and stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. I really like street epistemology, or which is Anthony Magnabosco, and it's based on a Socratic method, which is asking, right, like why, and he has this interesting method where he goes out in public, and just by asking questions, he gets people. He first asks them, how strongly do you believe in this? Like if you're a Muslim, Christian, whatever, Jewish person, and Hindu, whatever, and then they'll say like usually that's like 10 out of 10. And then he'll say, let me ask you some questions. And he doesn't tell them anything. He only asks them questions. And by the end, they're usually like 6 out of 10 now, or 7 out of 10. Like, why do you believe this to be true? Oh, because blah, 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 blah. My parents told me. Okay, but like, what if I asked you, what if someone else came to you and said, well, my parents tell me my religion is true. So how would you know which one is true now? They'd be like, good point. And this method, I think, takes a long time. And but honestly, if you have like as much time as possible, like if you're talking to a loved one, like a spouse, like me talking to my wife, and you have that free discourse where there's no like time limit, I think that's the best method. And I do think like the burden of proof, the problem with the burden of proof thing, where you be like, okay, I don't want to discuss this. I want you to tell me why you believe Islam to be true. Usually they think it's like a trick question. No. I don't want to go that route. You're trying to trick me.
Or usually it starts with the whole like long story of like just like you just have to, once you open that door, you just have to listen to a whole bunch of nonsense that you've already heard a million fucking times.
Well,
right?
No, I think it's a good approach, but I think that a lot of times people will just, once it gets to a certain point, they just kind of stop you and they're like, or sometimes it gets to a good point where they'll be like, I saw a dream and Jesus came to me in a dream. And they're like, it's personal. And then what do you say at that point? You're just like, okay, that's why you believe. And I don't believe because that's only for you. That reason only applies to you. It doesn't apply to me. Jesus never came to me in a dream. And so I don't think this is a reliable method, right, for determining the truth, because dreams could be false too, right?
Right.
So.
Yeah. Did you have any?
Go
ahead, Norman.
No, I'm just saying that sometimes, I mean, they say that they're asking questions, the Socratic method, but sometimes you're basically saying something. You're just putting it in a question format, right? Like when I say like, when somebody says like, well, it's faith, it's just based on my faith, it's not reason. And I say, well, don't you think if that was a reliable method, then all the other religions like Christianity and Hinduism should also use that method? Like if it was a reliable method, it wouldn't be giving you so much random different answers, right? But the thing is, like when you say, don't you think that, you're kind of like saying it, right? You're not, you're just putting it in a question format, but you're actually saying it, right?
I feel the difference is that you are more likely to win over your opponent when you make them conclude themselves that you are right, rather than you say, because I used to make that mistake before and I realized that it's not productive. Like I met one Muslim guy who was a good friend of mine and he's like, tell me why you don't believe. He really wanted to know. I'm like, I don't believe because of this and this and this and this. And I asked him, what do you think about this in the Quran? What do you think? And he was like so like overwhelmed with everything I was saying. He didn't have anything to say back to me. And it was just like the end of the conversation. Whereas I feel like if I would have asked him, like, why don't you tell me why you believe, and I'll give you some kind of feedback on that. Like, yeah, you're like, it doesn't have to be only questions.
Right.
You could say, well, that's an interesting point, but is that really a reliable method? Basically saying that's not a reliable method of knowing the truth or whatever.
Right.
But you get them to make the conclusion instead of you concluding. Because
I mean, what you're doing is you're actually, by asking them, you are transferring the burden of proof to them in a very subtle kind of way.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're saying, okay,
Sneaky.
so I'm not going to tell you what I think, but here's
way.
Right. You're putting it in the form of a question, and then and the other thing is it also disarms them. It disarms them in the sense that you're asking them, hey, what do you think? I really want to know what you think. I want to hear what you have to say.
Right. They don't feel like you're preaching to them. They feel like you're genuinely interested in their opinion instead.
Right. So. Yeah, that's I think that's where the utility of it is, and I think there's many ways to go around it. I think that's sort of my approach that I've been doing for a very, very long time when I'm speaking to people in person. I just didn't know what it was called. I didn't have a name for it. But I had a question. A lot of times when we talk to people who left Islam, we've had a lot of people on this podcast. They usually cite something that they read or some sort of outside influence. It seems like your journey or everything that you're talking about, these were internal doubts that came up. So you mentioned that one guy who told you about the rabbis and all those rabbinic stories from the Talmud and how they made their way into the Quran. So on. But is there were there any other things that you read before you made the conclusion that you were going to leave Islam, or did you start discovering, or did you connect with anybody in the ex-Muslim community? Did you know there was such a thing?
No. So, I didn't even. No, not at all. I think.
Did you think you'd find it, or were you surprised to find it afterwards?
I honestly think things have changed a lot in the last few years.
I know, yeah.
You can't not know ex-Muslims now, but at that time,
yay.
Nobody was. I don't think anyone was really talking about it to this level, and so this was all new to me. And to be honest, like a lot of the things which I looked into, they've become publicly easily accessible. It's not like it's really new information. Like, for example, the whole Alexander the Great connection to the Quran was done by a guy called Page, was it Budge Page or something, in the like the 70s or like long ago, maybe in this like, many years ago, and it was an Orientalist who found this connection, and now the masked Arab and other people have kind of made it easily accessible and consumable. But like the things were there, I just don't think it was common knowledge. And some of the issues that we're finding now with academia, where the Quran's narrative of being preserved is being challenged like never before, because again, it's not like a new thing. It's not. Some people say, "Oh, you think you're so smart, you ex-Muslims, you're coming up with these big claims against the Quran. It hasn't been preserved and this and that. Oh, this has been debunked many years ago."
Oh, but no, these things. Yeah. No. What I was. Sorry, finish what you're saying. Yeah.
It's not common. It's not common knowledge outside of academia. The problems with the preservation of the Quran. I think you talked to Abdullah Gondal in more detail. He's more knowledgeable than me about this. It's just nobody knows. And when I say nobody, I don't mean nobody. I mean the Muslim community, as in the majority of Muslims, they don't know these things. So we're kind of like just like bringing it out and letting people, hear about these things, basically.
Yeah. And this is what we discussed this with Abdullah Gondal as well. And this is what's kind of interesting is that a lot of this has been around. So I'll tell you, like, when you were writing, when you left Islam in July 2015, that's around the time I was in the middle of my manuscript for my book.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And so that's when I really started reading about a lot of this stuff, because when you read about this stuff, I'd be researching something and then I'd go further and further. Then eventually I'd end up with the Brill Encyclopedia of Islam, and I'd be it was incredible. I learned so much. And then some of the things that I learned were, for example, what you're saying about the rabbis, right? And this is very common knowledge in academia, as you said, that when Muslims first wanted to get the hadith written down, which is over 200 years, all of them started over 200 years after Muhammad's death, is that when they wanted to write the hadith, they went to converted rabbis in Kufa. So people who had converted from Judaism, because they had the initial isnads who transmitted who started codifying and writing down the hadith. They had experience with this stuff because the writing of the Talmud was a very similar process, right? So they actually went to them, and that's how a lot of the Jewish stuff that didn't make it into the Quran made it into the hadith, right? Like circumcision and like stoning to death, and then retrospectively all these other stories came in, like eaten by a goat, and so it was. So I found, and all of this stuff is, and I found out there was a lot of stuff in academia that is actually very blasphemous, like that book Hagarism by Patricia Crone, and that had a huge impact in academia, and later they retracted a lot of parts of it, but nobody had ever talked about it outside. Why? Because it was just very volatile and very, inflammatory material. So when Tom Holland wrote his book In the Shadow of the Sword, and he took a lot of this sort of stuff from academia and he put it out there, stuff that had been there for decades, but when he put it out there in the public, people lost their shit. It became a very, very controversial thing, and that's why it's been confined to academia.
I have a question.
So,
do you think that talking to Muslims and trying to get them to doubt Islam, is the method or the points that you bring up any different from talking to a Christian? And if so, do you think somebody with the background or better understanding of Islam is more equipped to talk to Muslims and make them doubt, or basically anybody that's with logic, we should be able to address it? Yeah, go on.
So it's actually a very good question, and
that's the only kind I ask.
I'll start by saying that clearly the guy that made me doubt in the beginning, and I was a religious, believing, staunch Muslim, but I was open-minded, was someone that didn't know too much about Islam, but he knew a little bit about Islam. And I think the general level of knowledge has gone up a lot because of popularizers like the masked Arab and stuff like that. But yes, very much so, someone that understands Islamic theology and, to a certain level is much more equipped to be able to discuss with Muslims. Absolutely so. But in terms of your question about, I have a little bit of a hard time when I discuss the Bible because, I don't know the Bible, right? And if someone says, no, but the Bible actually doesn't mean that, you're like, but I don't know the Bible. I can't even get to that. I can't take it to that level. Right. Whereas with the Islamic scripture, sometimes people are very intelligent. And like Richard Carrier, for example, he did a debate with this Nadir guy, Ahmed. And even without knowing the Islamic scripture, his knowledge of history, his knowledge of science, it was phenomenal. And his logic, he cut through the arguments, even when his Muslim opponent said something like, no, but the Islamic flood is a local flood, for example. He made a claim. Now, his opponent doesn't know anything about whether it's a local flood or a global flood. And if he was talking to me, I'd be like, yeah, but why does the Quran say, oh, Allah destroy all of the disbelievers on earth? Noah said that, right? So why does it say that then if it's just a local flood? That doesn't even make sense. That doesn't add up, right? And they'll have to come up with a better way of kind of making sense out of that. But Richard Carrier, even though he didn't know that, he came up with another response, and he said, well, even in this case, the flood, and he came up with a response and he was able to deal with it. So yeah, if you're a smart guy or girl, whatever, you can kind of hold your own in any discussion. But knowing the scripture, knowing the particular flaws, knowing the weakest points, and we need to kind of focus on opponent's strongest points, not the weakest points. Right now, I'm kind of unpopular to some people because I say things that people don't like when sometimes I defend Islam. They think I'm defending Islam. And that pisses off a lot of atheists, like when I say Muhammad is not a pedophile, for example, and that really upsets people. People get extremely angry at me and they say, how dare you defend this man who did these terrible things, whatever. And I'm just
trying to be pure evil.
Exactly.
I think Armin does a lot of the same stuff. I actually say the same thing when they call him a warlord.
Can you clarify that? Because people think that we might say that for example, Muhammad was very pro taking care of orphans, right? That's the
exactly.
character. But the reason why you don't call him a pedophile is because I think by definition pedophiles are only attracted to children, right?
Yeah,
but this guy had a whole bunch of, he was attracted to Aisha, but he also had a whole bunch of wives that were not children, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So he's a child molester, but not a pedophile.
I think there's more to it than it. If we want, as a non-Muslim,
right?
I'm not just looking at the hadith, because the hadith say 6 and 9, but if you look at it as a historical figure,
which we don't
do we really know for sure if he was married to a child? I don't know if we can say that for sure. And to be honest,
we're talking about the character of Muhammad, because we can't know anything for sure about Muhammad. We're talking about the Muhammad as canon is in Islam. Like the way I could talk about Voldemort. Like even if he's not real, even if there was no, I mean, I'm not saying there was no Muhammad. Even if there was no Muhammad, we're not talking about the person. We're talking about the character as described in Islam.
Yes,
but oh, sorry. Go ahead, Abdullah.
No, you go ahead. You haven't spoken.
No, I was going to say, but as we discussed, like the only thing that we really know about Muhammad that is most likely true is the scant biographical detail in the Quran. Yeah. Nothing else, no other biography, not the hadith. Everything else came.
We don't even know about that.
We don't. But I'm saying that's what I'm saying. If there's anything that's likely, the only book that we have from his reported lifetime that is most likely, almost certainly from his reported lifetime, is the Quran, right? That's actually, there's parchments that have been dated to that time and so on. So we know that is.
We don't even know now if it was in Mecca. Like, this is how far we are.
But that's what I'm saying, because the Quran isn't specific about Mecca, right? So so I'm saying in the Quran there's very, very scant biographical detail about Muhammad. There's almost none, right? So that's really what we know, and that's nothing. Everything else about his life, from everything in the hadith, was written over 200 years afterwards. Okay, everything. His first biography was compiled 100 years afterwards. The one that survives by Ibn Hisham, the one that's based on, didn't survive into today, and that was written over 150 years afterwards. So so I think, am I getting you right? Is that what you're trying to say, in the sense that
I do think that there's better arguments to make on this very specific topic. For example, the Quran in 65:4 allows, basically divorce of women that you had sex with were below the age of puberty. So, I mean, that's an argument that's worth making, not whether the historical fact is he married a child, it's very disputable. There's so many arguments you can make against it. Like, the fact is, he only had one, if he had one child wife. All his other wives were, older teens, let's say, and older. And so he
only raped one child.
It's hard to make, it's much more difficult to make this argument, and it turns away people.
But it doesn't, I mean, that's not what okay, I'm going to defend people that make this argument, okay? Because we are not making that claim about the historical Muhammad. We don't know what the fuck was the historical Muhammad doing, okay? The Muhammad that I'm referring to when I'm criticizing Muhammad is the Muhammad that Muslims believe in. Muhammad that is canonized in Islam. That's the Muhammad.
And I feel like even that is changing. There's many Muslims now that are refusing to say that she was 6 and 9. Like, it's a kind of reform too, I guess, to say that she was actually older. But again, like, if you go to academia. Again, the challenge is like that he was married to a 19-year-old, and this is coming also from academia, where they're looking at the life events that happened, and going back to calculate the age rather than just by hadith. So they're throwing out the
authentic hadith then?
They're throwing out the authentic hadith, and academia does that. Academia throws out the authentic hadith.
Okay, but this is not the Islam that we know.
No, but they also throw out the biography. Academia also throws out the biography.
Throwing out the biography is fine. Nobody ever said that that's authentic. I mean, nobody...
but academia looks at the hadith and the biography as the same, because both of them were orally transmitted, right?
Most Islamic schools, they don't claim that the biographies are authentic 100%. They only claim that about Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, right? More than anything else, right? So based on most Islamic schools of thought, these are the sources of hadiths based on Sunnis, and Shias have their own hadiths, and based on
you're right. You're right about that, but we're talking about academia. So in academia, right? In Al-Azhar University, it's going to be that. If you go to Qom, it's going to be
real academia.
No, we're not. Qom and Al-Azhar are not real academia.
Okay, I'm talking about Islam. Okay, I'm talking about Islam. Okay, so according to Islam, as what we know as Islam, I'm not talking about Muslims, because Muslims, they make Islam whatever their Islam is not as really Islam. Their Islam is just basically what they want Islam to be, right? And most Muslims don't want their prophet, don't want to have an inconvenience of having a prophet that fucked a 9-year-old, right? So they're Yeah, go on.
So this topic is how to engage with Muslims. My perspective is this is a counterproductive argument that turns away people that has no actual success, in my opinion. In my perspective,
I agree with that.
It's a useless argument that you won't win because there's so much. Like, you've taken the biggest guns that they have. You know, for example, Jonathan Brown.
Lowest hanging fruit.
And for example, Yasir Qadi and Hamza Yusuf. And the biggest guns have shooting down this argument. So you're wasting your time on this heavy muscles on the other side that are like pushing back against this argument, saying it's historical this, and at that time people were used to get married younger and this and that. And there's no point, there's no value because they're just going to get mad at you and stop listening when you say this.
I got to disagree with you. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit.
I know some people that when they looked into the hadiths and saw this, they were like, I'm not okay with this.
And the reason I'll disagree with you on this is this, that when I talk to ex-Muslim women, and there have been over the last 10 years, and this is one of those topics when I guess I started speaking out initially. This is one thing that I was very vocal about, and I was very convinced by the people around me, especially my family, that we shouldn't talk about this because this is just something that turns people off immediately. So I kind of backed off on it too. But then when I started meeting ex-Muslims, and this didn't happen until at least for quite a while, because for a while I was just writing and mouthing off, and I hadn't really met a lot of ex-Muslims. But then suddenly when they started appearing, and they came out, and especially all the women, when I came, this is one of the most common reasons I've heard from young women, right? Women who they're like, I just can't deal with that. Why did he marry a 9-year-old? Like, and they became ex-Muslim.
Married a 6-year-old.
Married a 6-year-old. Yeah, but I mean the way that they say it in the common parlance is
that's an interesting point. That's an interesting point, and maybe because I'm more engaged with the dawah and the counter dawah, the counter apologetics, I've seen like the responses to this, and people that are more like religious Muslims that are like have read some of the responses, have heard some of the responses, they're not fazed by that because they're like, well, we can explain it in other ways. Like, this was the way of life back then, or this was. So yes, there's definitely going to be some people that are like. But that's interesting to know. I'm surprised to hear that.
I mean, people do have
inspired this.
No, they do have those arguments. So I heard them all. That in Arabia, girls used to menstruate earlier. At that time, they were looking at the Islamic calendar years, and there were these calculations. She was actually 19 years. So I come from an Ithnashi Shia background where they're trying to reform this like crazy. So I brought out actually Tahrir al-Wasila, which is a book by Khomeini. The 4th volume of it, which for some reason is very hard to get, but I have the entire thing in Arabic and in PDF, the original one that he wrote. I got it from my book because I wanted to prove that he said this. So he actually said that Khomeini said that you're allowed to have sex with a girl. You're allowed to have sexual pleasure from a child that is a nursing baby. Yeah. So he said that you can do intracrural sex, which is thighing. You can fondle them. There's all these things, and he said that based on.
You could be a fucking infant.
An infant. So he said this with Khomeini, and then so in my extended family, like we grew up. My extended family had pictures of Khomeini on the wall, right?
Wait, what? You had Khomeini? You guys were related to Faqih kind of Shias? I never knew that.
Yeah. In Pakistan, a lot of them. We're talking about the 80s.
This is so crazy. 80s. So did Khomeini manage to get this far into Pakistan?
Everybody who was Shia around the world loved Khomeini because Khomeini was first of all, he stuck it to the US, so that was one thing. The other thing is this happened in 1979. I'm talking about the early 80s, mid 80s.
We need to do this. We need to have an entire podcast about this. But go on.
But I just want to tell you this because this is related to it. So when I grew older and when I found this and then I showed it to a lot of the people, I actually posted it on Facebook and then it became a meme and everything. But when I got the quote and I have all of the legit sources for it, it's actually still on Khamenei's website. This book is still on there and you can still find this thing. Khamenei? And I have screenshots of it. Khamenei's website, official, the Khamenei.ir. So when I found this, they were absolutely shocked. And that kind of showed to me how hard they're trying to dispute this. It's one of those things where, how, that now they're saying that Muhammad was a first feminist. This is a revisionist sort of historical edit, right, that they've done, where they've retrospectively gone in, and because now we have these new secular values and we have to make that fit in. So Muhammad became the first feminist. And I always joke, I'm like, 50 years from now, they're going to say Muhammad was the first gay rights activist, because it's only like everyone's going to accept gay rights and then be like, well, Muhammad accepted it all along. So
yeah,
but these retrospective edits happened. All of the arguments about Aisha being older, they're all from the last century. And a lot of them are from non-Arab scholars, right, who have tried to revise this in some way or another. But I'm telling you, I think that one of the most, and this actually includes me too, one of the biggest things that I had a problem with was this marriage. Mm-hmm. The majority of ex-Muslim women that I know, and my wife she deals with a lot of she deals with a lot of ex-Muslim female activists, especially from Pakistan and the subcontinent, and we hear from them all the time that this is almost probably the number one reason that they.
But let me make your Abdullah's point in a different way, because maybe not about this one, because first of all, I think we should try everything, right? I mean, what works with some people doesn't work with other people, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, but at the same time, I think what we say about Islam sometimes, and I think, Abdullah, you might disagree with me on here, because I think you commented on this. Sometimes we're not trying to. Sometimes the goal is to make Muslims doubt their religion, and sometimes it's to make a point that you don't get to tell us that we can't say this. Do you know what I mean? Oh. So, for example, when I had the Allah is gay sign, that's people are like, how is this going to help people out of the religion? I was like, that wasn't what I was trying to do there, right? And I think you disagreed with me when I did a Quran burning, right?
Yeah.
The Quran.
Yeah,
go on.
I guess it depends on your goals and stuff, and I'm not so much into that kind of free speech kind of discussion as much as you guys, maybe.
Right.
Especially you. I have a very specific intent in what I'm doing, which is to help. I wouldn't even call it make Muslims doubt. I would call it help Muslims to see that Islam is not true. I mean, from my perspective,
they can
choose. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd be happy if people see that Islam is false and they don't waste their lives on something that's not true. Because, I mean, that's one thing I can do with my life that'll help people, right? And because it helped me and it made my life materially better, right? So, but of course, there's other reasons why people do things, and there's other goals that you may have, which may conflict in sometimes with my goals. My main goal is this, and my main goal might be a little bit different. And so there's other. I
have that goal as well. I just like when a Muslim comes to me and asks, why don't you believe in God, or why did you left Islam? I'm going to tell them, well, Allah is gay. I'm not going to burn a Quran in front of them, right? Obviously that's not going to work. But if people tell us that we can't burn the Quran, I think that it makes sense to burn the Quran. But do you disagree with that still? Like based on the fact that the point was to challenge taboos, to challenge limits on free speech? Do you disagree with that?
Okay, so I'll tell you. Okay, so in the interview of Sam Harris with Peter Singer, he's a utilitarian ethicist, and what surprised me was when Sam Harris asked him a similar question, and he said, "Do you think we should stop making Muhammad cartoons, draw Muhammad Day or whatever?" Right? And Peter Singer was like, well, like, look at the consequences, and being a consequentialist and being a utilitarian, he's like, look at the mobs and the killings and the people dying and the protests and the boycotts of like Danish cheese and all these people losing their jobs and this and that. And Sam Harris was a little bit taken back, and he kind of like challenged him a bit on it and said like, well, we shouldn't. And then the conclusion was kind of like, we shouldn't stop doing it because of that, and we shouldn't let them bully us into stopping because they're gonna like burn the streets down or whatever. And I had a Facebook kind of poll about this, and it was like 50-50, where people like 50%. I even asked if Draw Muhammad Day would lead to World War III, would you still support it? And it was like 50-50, and I voted no. I said no, I wouldn't do it because. Well,
I mean,
I'm practically speaking, I value my life more than
of course
like Muhammad or something. So it depends. It's just a weighted cost benefit analysis that everybody has to make. And
yeah, but the reason why I support it is because I don't think it's going to relate to World War III, and I think that in fact, if protests, if the fact that they did a protest was successfully shut that down, that's going to encourage more it wasn't just protests. It was just like the barbarism that was like, I don't have anything against protests.
Yeah.
The barbarism that was in a response to that.
Yeah, the violence.
The violence, if that worked, you're encouraging more of it. It's not like if it works, they're just going to sit back and like, okay, now we're happy. They're saying, okay, this is a very useful tool. Let's see what else we could get them to shut the fuck about, right?
Yeah. Well,
well, I have something else.
But another thing is that
this.
he was proven wrong, because look, we had a Dry Muhammad Day annually. Now we do it more than we ever did before, and we desensitized Muslims. Look at the first. The reaction to it is not as much as it used to be. Right? We say like, oh, you want us to stop drawing Muhammad? This is an annual event now. Everybody's doing it. Look at the reaction to it. Is that nearly as much as it backfired? It doesn't work. If you respond to it is like, okay, we're not going to do it anymore, then they're going to go after something else. If the response to it is that we're going to do it now 10,000 times more, they're going to see that this is not an effective way to shut people up. But go on.
I have so this is that I think, Armin, what you're saying at the end, that's the part I agree with. So Abdullah, I'm kind of like you. I'm not a fan of like the burning Qurans or drawing Muhammad and everything. It's not totally my thing. Just in terms of taste, that's not something that I would do. But I have
you don't
been.
Draw Muhammad?
But I do encourage this now. And the reason I encourage it, I'll give you the example, like, with Trump, right? Trump came up, everyone's like, we're not going to normalize this. It's not going to be a normal presidency or whatever. But the thing is that even the really shitty things he's done, he goes out and he does it so often that it has become normalized. So when people get desensitized to things, they start thinking, okay, this is normal. This is routine. I remember when the Danish cartoons first came out in 2006, I had not seen anything like that in major publications, like where I could actually Google it, and I actually saw that first figure with the bomb in his turban. I was like, holy shit, this guy really put himself out there. I remember being shocked. Yeah. Okay. And I remember when I was in high school, and I got shocked when I was very shocked when Salman Rushdie wrote that book, because I didn't even think it was conceivable. Right. But what happened is that over time now, when you Google, Muhammad cartoons are. They're nothing. They're just like all over the place. Nobody knows who to kill.
Normalize burning the Quran. Normalize having signs. Normalize having signs saying Allah is gay.
And actually, Armin, when you burned the Quran, actually, I have to give you credit. There are a couple of Qurans that you showed that you didn't burn. Like, he's like, oh, well, I've got this Quran. I don't know what you said. He said, this is my rainbow Quran, so I really like this one. And then I was it one of them that you actually kissed? Or something? I don't know. No, it wasn't. Okay. That was another book.
I had 3 Qurans. And then, I burned the cheapest one. There was an expensive one with the tafsir.
He said, I don't want to burn this because this one's expensive. and Armin has also said many times that he likes the Quran. Yeah. Like, he enjoys reading the Quran now that he's not Muslim, right? So that's all. So Armin has a much more sort of nuanced approach to this. But I do. Other
people say, well, why would you burn paper? You're committing to, like, we have global warming and you're doing carbon. So I donated $10, which to offset my carbon footprint, and actually that was like 1 ton of worth of carbon emissions. So I was like, this is way more than what I'm burning today. So I basically addressed every single problem. People say this is censorship. I basically said, look, my phone has a lot of free Quran apps. This is not going to limit anyone's access to the Quran.
It was the most sophisticated Quran burning video I've ever seen. First of all, he's burning it very carefully on his barbecue, right?
And people said people also said this is hateful. I said, look, I have my own book, Why There Is No God. I'm burning a few pages of that as well.
He burned his own book as well.
Yeah, I said, if it's hateful, then I'm being hateful to myself.
and he's got so he says he likes the Quran. He keeps the expensive one. He keeps the rainbow one. He burns a couple of his own pages. He burns the other one. Then he gives a sophisticated sort of a little bit of a discourse on what this is all about. It was really bizarre. It was like the Arrested Development episode version of the Quran burning. I don't know if you guys have seen that show. Some of you might get the...
No.
Never mind. It's a TV show.
He also said this is what Nazis used to do.
Man.
So why would you do what Nazis or fascists used to do? I said, well, when the Nazis did that, they were trying to limit people. First of all, this is my own Quran. I didn't take anyone else's Quran, right? When they were burning books, they were burning other people's books. They were burning other people's property. I'm burning my own property. Second of all, when they were burning the books, they were trying to limit people's access to information. When we burn the Quran, people might actually wonder what's in this that these people don't like about it so much. They actually might encourage more people to read the Quran, right? And at that point, like...
Any publicity is good publicity?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, the books were the main source of storing educational material. Right now, they're not, right? So books are not... Yeah, go on.
I guess my response to that is, I mean, for one thing, for sure, I agree that, we should not negotiate with terrorists.
Right.
You don't give in to someone when they point a gun at you because you just can't. I mean, I don't mean literally. Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, yes, if someone pointed a gun.
Unless it's those girls in the. Oh, never mind, forget it.
But I mean, that aside, even though I do agree with the principle of like not giving into terrorism in any way. I mean, in this case, it's literal terrorism because the burning and whatever, trying to scare people. I don't even mean in that extreme case. We don't give in with people like that. Right. But I just feel like in my case, with what I'm trying to do and trying to achieve, it leaves a distaste in my mouth, and it kind of, creates this bigger divide between us and them. Sometimes
that's how I feel.
That's right. Okay, I'm going to prove you guys. I'm going to tell you guys that this is wrong. When I was
and one more thing. So sometimes I cross the line, and this is the thing. I'm saying all these things, but sometimes I cross the line too. Like I've made posts on Facebook that like really pissed off people, especially when I'm being like sarcastic and joking around.
Right.
And I've said things like, one thing that was so harmless too. I just said instead of saying Bismillah, I say Yabba Dabba Do, and it works just as well. And this actually really pissed off a few people, including one loyal Muslim friend of mine.
Right.
And I don't know if you guys know this guy, Mubin Sheikh. He's kind of, anyways, he's well known in the community, and he was going to have an Islamic discussion with me. After this, he blocked me, and he was so pissed off because, anyway, sometimes I piss off Muslims too. Like I'm not trying to say I'm so holy and I'm so nice and I never piss off people. I do. I upset people, and it's okay to upset people.
The very nature of what you're saying is, I think that's the thing. I think it's a matter of taste when it comes to right and wrong. I have to say, and I learned this really from, and I'm mentioning her a lot today because I guess maybe it's the Ismaili connection, or maybe it's we're talking about how to engage with Muslims, but there's a huge contrast in the way that my wife deals with this stuff and the way that I deal with it. And my wife is extremely, she's more like Armin is in the sense that she's much more aggressive, totally in your face. She's like
not aggressive when I'm talking to Muslims, you know what I mean? Like when I'm I'm really like out.
It's not a bad thing, Armin. It's a compliment.
No. Aggressive, like when it's not like when I'm talking to a Muslim, I'm telling them like, I talk to them in a very polite way. A lot of them come thinking that I'm going to be like hateful, and then once they have a conversation with me, they actually become my friends. I mean, the conversation when a Muslim is in front of me, I'm not going to be rude to them in any way. Obviously, like I mean, I'd be aggressive when it comes to the ideas, but you can still be aggressively attack people's ideas in a polite way. Being aggressive, I mean, not holding back.
That's kind of what I'm getting. I think that when I mean in your face, I don't necessarily mean like super aggressive. I mean assertive and getting your point across in a much more blunt way.
Yeah.
Right? So
that's
so okay. So let's reword it that way. So it's more of a it's more of the Malcolm X approach versus the Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King approach. And the thing is, both of those are important. Both of them had a huge part to play, and different things work on different people, right? So, and I have noticed that these things work on different people.
Can I tell you why you guys are wrong when you're saying that you might actually turn off some people, that they're not going to talk to you? That's so wrong, because first of all, when I, for example, did the Allah is gay video, I wasn't even trying to reach out to Muslims. It was more of a free speech.
Wait, Armin, but just a clarity, I don't think that it's the deterrent isn't that we're going to turn off people. Like, we're going to turn off people no matter what we do. I think it's what I'm saying is that it's more of a matter of taste. Like, some people find something.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think Abdullah made the point that you might lose some Muslims that they might have talked to you before, right?
Yeah, but you're creating a bigger gap, right? That's what I feel.
But that's not the case. Let me make make this point. But I know, even though I wasn't trying to reach to Muslims to talk to, I do that with different ways, right? I do reach out to Muslims. I do talk to a lot of Muslims, but this was not the goal of the Allah is gay video. The Allah is gay video is like, you don't get to tell us what the fuck to say, and also to highlight how homophobic the Muslim community is, and also to break taboos and all the other stuff. But the thing is that I have now more Muslims in my inbox that want to talk to me and ask me why I'm an ex-Muslim because of that video than ever before. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of Muslims found me, and
that's exactly what I've seen too.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. But like, they're not like, they don't want to kill you. They're like, they're happy to talk to you.
They do.
No, all of that. There are Muslims that want to bring me back to Islam. There are Muslims that want to kill me. There are Muslims that want to rape my wife. There are Muslims.
But specifically for this Allah's gay video, like, didn't you get a more hostile response, would you say, than average, or not the same? Like, compared to like in the Quran, Allah's gay. Don't you get like more fanatics after you for those topics rather than like?
I get both. I get Muslims that want to kill me.
Yeah.
I get a lot of Muslims that want to talk to me politely. I get Muslims that apologize for the Muslims that want to kill me.
Yeah, I get that too. I get that too.
Why are you apologizing? You didn't want to kill me, right? I get Muslims that want to kill me, but then after I talk to them, now they want to talk to me, right?
Nice.
But the thing is that for every Muslim that might have talked to me and now they don't want to talk to me, I get 100 Muslims that now actually want to talk to me. Do you know what I mean?
Really?
And here's the thing. So and Armin, I'm almost sure that you've gotten this too. Okay, but what you see is that even from the ones that want to kill you, strangely, sometimes you hear from them 2 years down the line. 3 years down the line, depending on how much. So, Armin, you've gotten that, right? Because I know Alishma's gotten this a lot. There's people who have, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, they've written to me and they've said, can you tell your wife to unblock me? I had a huge argument with her 3 years ago, and I was defending myself, but now I think like you. Now I'm an ex-Muslim. So, like the testimonials that you were talking about, they're the initial immediate testimonials where people like listen to it, the rational people. Then there's others that they're like, why the fuck did you do this? And then they go and they get really pissed off, and then they have this argument, then they go back and they're forced to think. Then they go and they read up about things because they're getting defensive, and then 2 years later they come back and they're like, you know what? I was there, and that happens amazingly often.
But
I'm surprised.
Even more than that, even the Muslims there's even more examples of Muslims that don't leave Islam, but they come and say like, I'm gonna find you, I'm gonna fucking kill you, right? And then you talk to them politely. They don't even if they don't leave Islam, and you talk to them and you're like, well, why do you want to kill me? Like, what did I do wrong? Then they change it, like, you know what? Sorry, I was very emotional. I didn't mean to be. You got a death threat from them.
That's right too.
And then
that just happened to me last week.
Yeah, and then we're like, you have to understand that Muhammad is like a mother to us, or Allah is so dear to us, so close to us. It's worse than seeing. They come up with the weirdest example. It's worse than watching your mother being raped in front of you.
Muhammad is like a mother to us?
No, no. Basically,
they say like you're insulting my mother.
Not a mother to you. Like, you know how much you love your mother. For us, Muhammad is even bigger and greater than that. Like, when you insult Allah, it's worse than seeing your own mother being raped in front of you. It's always like female and rape. These examples that they come up with, right? The threats is also a lot of like, but
strange.
Don't you guys get threats to?
Yeah, no. I've gotten
we're gonna
that.
Rape your daughter. We're gonna rape your sister. Rape your
mother. I got one where, the kind of stuff they say about your kid, like, and they want to play. But anyway.
I haven't got any in a long time. Well, it was like really bad when I first came out. Now I don't really get any. once in a while now.
Can you?
They are less frequent. They are.
They're not. Yeah, they're very much so.
5 years ago.
Because they see that we screenshot them and post them.
No, Armin, it's because of what you're making. The point you're making about the burning Quran and Allah's gay thing. It's been normalized. Ex-Muslims are normalized. People know about them.
And
it's
then the
impossible
reformers
not
come
to.
and take credit for it. Like, we're normalizing shit, and people are like, "Oh, look, the Muslim community is reforming." Like, yeah, no thanks to you.
No, it's ex-Muslims who are causing people to go moderate and reform. It's not really the reform people that are making people ex-Muslims.
Yeah,
it's the other way around. So it's really I haven't really figured out, and I haven't put my finger on exactly what's going on. But there's been an amazing acceleration of this stuff. And again, I'm saying this is somebody, like, I started writing for HuffPost in 2008. So it has been exactly 10 years. And I've been talking about this stuff. And the way that it has changed just in the last, I think, maybe 3 years or so has been incredible. The way that ex-Muslims have just mushroomed out of everywhere. And, Abdullah, like, when we started talking and I was telling you how much I loved you and all of that in our private messaging, which I did. And so I went up and I noticed that you had messaged me before, like a very long time ago.
Yeah.
And I had missed that. And
too famous to me.
I had
like practically speaking, when you get like a lot of people contact you, you miss more, right? So I mean that happened. But yeah, I wanted to get in touch with you. I wanted to meet you, but somehow I didn't get a chance to actually end up meeting you. But yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah, we're gonna do it.
Right, so I have more questions, by the way, before we get to Patreon questions.
Yep.
Okay, so what do you say to Muslims that, like, let's say an ex-Muslim, an average ex-Muslim is talking to a Muslim about why Islam is wrong and blah blah blah, and then the Muslim and constantly like, well, what's your what's your academic background in Islamic studies? What's your credentials? If you have a problem with Islam, tell me the level of education that you have in Islamic scholarship, like as a way to try to undermine their credibility, them talking about Islam. What would you say? How would you say that ex-Muslim should respond to something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do get that sometimes. And people will say, and it, I mean, really, it's a double standard, right? Because when you join Islam, there's no expectation that you need to know anything. And you just like blindly believe now that Muhammad is the messenger of God and Allah is, the Lord of the universe, based on maybe something that sounded nice or some similarity to your previous religion of Christianity or Ismailism to Sunnism in my case. But like when you leave Islam, suddenly you need to have a PhD, you need to know Arabic, you need to know like the inside out. Yeah. And I think like the Quran
just to make your point, you're saying like why do they have the standard you have to be a fucking scholar to be able to leave Islam, but they don't have the same standards when somebody wants to join Islam. But yeah, go on.
Exactly, yeah. And, I think the Quran does a good enough job all by itself, even without the hadith, of showing you that it's not from the creator of the universe.
Right.
And I think it's clear enough that I don't need to tell anyone that I'm an Islamic scholar. I can just point out some simple things that people can look up for themselves, right? And at the end of the day, everyone has to decide what they want to, if they have the, the courage to leave Islam when the holes are shown to them, right? I'm saying? That takes some courage, that takes some balls, some guts to like actually, say like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe all these years I've been following something that's actually not true.
Right.
And that's difficult because sometimes I ask myself that, like, I'm not like the most smartest guy. How is it that I was able to find my way through it? And I see some people that are much more intelligent than me, and they're still Muslim. And I thought about it. I'm like, at some point it comes down to courage, right? At some point there's also some like matter of fact things that happen in your life that expose you. Yeah, and some things make you like sometimes personal trials in your life will make you doubt and will make you think about these things. Like I know a guy that very good friend of mine that his marriage broke down and he got divorced, and that actually made him like self-reflect a lot, and eventually he left Islam, not because he was blaming God or anything like that, but it made him look into everything in his life, and then he found the holes in Islam and he left Islam. For me, I didn't have that issue happening, but I mean it sometimes it's just a spark, right? But you need the courage to really look into it and to see that maybe I'm wrong, right?
So he's one thing. So that was a very good response. One thing I will usually say is that I don't need to be an expert in witchcraft and wizardry to know that that's bullshit, right?
I would never say that.
Yeah, I would say leprechaunology, like the I think it was the Richard Dawkins thing, that you don't have to know everything about leprechaunology to reject.
Another point. Another 2 points that I actually asked this in the group Ex-Muslims of North America, and I got some good responses that I heard before, but they reminded me to bring this up as well, is that Muhammad himself was, didn't have any education. He couldn't even read and write, right? And another thing is that the Quran itself mentions that this is a clear message. There's a verse message that is, this is a very clear and obvious message. So it should be like, if people think that you need to be a scholar to be able to decode the Quran, it goes against the universality of the message for it to be for all men, for all time. It makes it a very, So those are other points to bring up.
That's another very good point. And I've even heard a Muslim scholar, Hamza Yusuf, say that atheists have a higher standard of God. And he was doing a good thing. He was trying to build some empathy for our position. And he was saying Muslims need to understand sometimes it's that he was saying we're wrong, but still he's like, it's coming from a good place. Like we're trying to say, well, why would God allow these things? Or why would God make these mistakes, right? And so, it's true. I mean, why do we hold God to such a low standard? That he's like such an idiot that he couldn't like even get his book right. He couldn't like find a better way of preserving it. He couldn't make the message without these like so many issues that we're finding, right? So that's another good point, right?
Right. And what do you say to people that say that, why are you talking to average Muslims that don't really understand Islam instead of talking to scholars? Yeah, what do you say?
I get accused of that too. I get accused of, you're just misguiding all the dumb Muslims, basically, right? Like all the ones that don't know there's a religion.
Right.
And I don't really know what to say to that, because I think you don't need to be an expert on Islam to see it's false. I mean, back to what you said, you don't need to know everything in the religion. You just need one mistake in the Quran and it's done.
Yeah, and how much do you need to know about Nordic mythology to reject it?
Exactly.
How much do you need to know about these people? They've all rejected Hinduism. None of them have read about it. They don't. They haven't read the Vedas or any of the scriptures of Hinduism. Right? They haven't read. They've rejected all of these other faiths. They've rejected all of the ancient mythologies without knowing, like Greek mythology, without knowing Greek. They've rejected there's so many different. This
is a different point than the first one. This is like you're going after Muslims that don't know their religion and trying to make them ex-Muslim, but these are like not people that are really good at understanding their own religion. You should go after, like, you're basically going after low-hanging fruit.
Okay. Good question. So I would love, like me personally, I would absolutely love to have a discussion with like a proper Islamic scholar. Nobody wants to talk to us. Okay, and I say nobody, I don't mean nobody. But there's a few people that are willing to kind of do this, I'm going to debate ex-Muslims thing. But like the rest of them, it's honestly not in their favor to acknowledge us at this point. So what they do is they talk about us, but they don't talk to us.
Right.
But like, we're not running away. Like, I'm happy to have a discussion with a Muslim scholar and let's talk about it. Like, and I think some people are actually, like Imtiaz Shams is a good example of someone that's building these bridges.
Right.
And is kind of getting inroads into the Muslim community. And
former guest on the podcast, by the way.
Former guest, yeah, he's been on the podcast. We actually really had a wonderful episode with him.
I just think they're dismissing their own community. So, like, I just feel like, these maggots, they're not truly, like, they don't understand. Like, why are you talking to these low lives, right? Way to shit on your own community. I mean, when you're doing that, I mean, I'm not, okay, so this is not whataboutism, this is pointing hypocrisy, because the whole da'wah thing goes like, okay, so if you want to do da'wah, then why are you reaching out to atheists that are Christian? Why are you not going after or you only should do da'wah to like atheist scholar. I don't know what the fuck you're
Atheist scholar?
Atheist scholar.
Richard Dawkins
atheist popes or
Sam
something.
Harris?
Yeah, like you have to go after Sam Harris. Not you can't. Why are you talking to me, right? I don't know, but
I think that there's so Abdullah, you were at my talk at the UTM, right? The other night. So what happened was and I know, so we've talked, Armin and I have talked about this here a lot, that the next step is really starting to engage with Muslims. And this is why we have you on, because we know that you do that a lot.
Right.
And you're very, very good at it. So what happened in that audience is there were a lot of Muslim people in that audience. So Armin, I haven't told you all this yet because it was so recent. But what they did was that they had some security concerns. So a lot of the Muslim groups, because Mississauga is like where I live, there's a lot of Muslim people here. The students went up to them a day before and they had raised a lot of concerns. So one of the security measures that they took, and this I've never really seen before, the university first of all stuck to it, which kudos to them in this atmosphere.
Which university?
They said. This is the University of Toronto at Mississauga. Right. They said that, so this was an invite. It wasn't from a student group. It was actually from the university. It's called the Schneider Lecture. So they had, what they said was, they told them that, we believe in free speech, so we're going to have this sort of important dialogue. But as a way for to address the security concerns, they invited a professor of Islamic studies to come and do the first, and start off the Q&A with me afterwards. So that was actually a security measure. And he did come. Yeah. And we did have an exchange after that, which I think was really good. And there were many other sort of people who were Islamic studies students and everything. In fact, I think close to half of the people there were Muslims, right? And so it was really... I think that's a really good way to engage people. That if you have a talk, if you're doing a talk somewhere, Armin, you do talks, and I do talks and stuff, and Abdullah, I think you should start doing them if you haven't started already.
We should
definitely. Yeah. We should have you on a panel, absolutely. Yeah. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. But what we should do is that bring in Islamic studies professors as a way to, after that, can you give a response after the talk? We'll have the response from Professor blah, blah, blah.
Honestly, I'd rather have a Muslim scholar, not an academic, because as you saw from the questions he was asking, academics come from a very different perspective. They're not even, I hate to say they're not proper Muslims. They're not many people would even consider the things the guy was saying to be blasphemous, like the Muslim professor, the questions he was asking when he was saying Rumi, wine-drinking Muslims, ham-eating Muslims, and he was saying a kind of bigger, kind of more broad perspective, more inclusive kind of interpretation of Islam. These aren't what the common Muslims believe, right? So I feel like
Omar Khayyam.
Yeah, getting a scholar, meaning at
least frozen.
I don't know if they'll do it. Yeah, he was frozen for a second. Are you still? Yeah, he's dead. Okay. So yeah, more than an academic, because academics, they might even agree with us. Yeah, the hadith are not true. I believe that most of them are fabricated. I believe that, Reza Aslan in his book, he says most of the hadith were just made up, right? In order for the princes and the kings to kind of prove the whatever they wanted, right? So I think we'd actually have more people agree with us from academics perspective, but I think we'd have a more interesting discussion with hardline, whether the Salafis or Wahhabis or Sufis or whichever representative from the Muslim community, and it could be a professor.
No, but we could do that too. We could bring them on if we're doing this was in a university setting, so we got a university professor. Yeah. But if we have another event that's outside, we could call an Islamic scholar. It's so listen, we have an atheist. Sorry, you guys there?
Yeah, we're still there.
Yeah.
Did I get frozen?
Yeah.
You were frozen for a second, but continue.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Keep talking.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. So we can say, okay, there's an atheist ex-Muslim doing a talk here. He's the author of blah 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 book, or he's the host of blah 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 podcast, and we would like you to come and give him a response. And I think a lot of Islamic scholars might jump at the opportunity when it's presented in that context. So I just thought that it worked really well at this event, and the fact that he was coming over to give that response brought a lot of Muslim students there, and it was a really it was a pretty packed crowd, and they came in. We had a very engaging Q&A session afterwards as well. So, and it went on for longer than it was supposed to. So I think that that could, just in terms of how to engage with Muslims, this was an accidental discovery. Obviously, they did it for security reasons, but I think this is something that we should try to do in the events that we do too.
Can you spell it out? Like just having some high-profile Muslim scholar,
representative of the community, I would say.
Representative of the community. Like supposing you come to Toronto over here and we do a talk. Supposing I'm doing a talk, right? Like the I did the other night, and there's the title and it's been promoted and people coming in, and then we say that, and we talk to an Islamic scholar. We're like, this is a talk that's happening. We'd like you to come, and after the talk, we want you to conduct the Q&A, right, with the speaker, and to give a bit of a response before you start the Q&A. And, whether it's the imam of the local mosque or whoever it is, Islamic scholar. And then when they come in and they say, okay, I'm going to be going over there and I'll be talking to this guy, that'll bring more Muslims into the audience as well. And it'll actually result in some sort of engagement. So in this case, it happened with the professor and it worked that way. And I thought it worked. It was actually one of the most enjoyable things I've done. So I think that that's an approach we should explore.
By the way, guys, we need to address Patreon questions at some point.
Okay, let's do that. Abdullah, do you have anything else to say, or should we just go to Patreon's questions?
No. Let's do the questions. Yeah.
All right. Should I read them out?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, hold on. Let's start from the beginning. So Abdullah. Okay, so Stephen is asking, your recent video asking Muslims if we can criticize.
I already answered that.
Oh, you already answered that? Okay.
Carol. This is about the Sydney video I did in Australia. But go on. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so Carol is asking, this is a question to everybody. I teach at a school where a colleague wears a hijab. How do I discuss in my classes the topic of Muslim women taking off their hijabs without making it seem like a personal attack on her? The topic of Muslim women taking off the hijab? Okay, so who wants to take this? Well, should I speak?
Oh, you mean like women in Iran that they're taking their hijab off?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. I have to think about this.
Yeah, so the way, and I've actually talked about this to audiences where there were a lot of hijabis, and I have talked about how there are a lot of women who have ideological problems with the hijab. There's a lot of people who wear the hijab for identity purposes. There are some people who are confused, like they're wearing the hijab, but they have ideological issues with it. They rebel against their parents. Why are you making me wear this? But when they go outside, they're concerned about being part of the Muslim community, because of the rise of Trump or whatever. So they'll say that, that's why I wear the hijab. There's many complicated reasons for it. So I'd sort of set up that context and really frame it as
fast because we're going over time. So Ali, shorten your answers.
Okay, so I'd frame it as a thing of choice, right? If a woman wants to wear the hijab, she can. If she doesn't want to, she doesn't have to. But nobody should be forced to wear it. And unfortunately, the majority of women in the world who wear the hijab are forced to wear it in countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran and so on.
I understand
that way. Okay, let's move on really quickly.
I quickly want to answer. No, wait.
Hey, I work in a library.
Hey, Ali, stop. All right, let me just quickly answer. First, I think you have to see if.
Go ahead.
I think there's a delay, Ali.
Yeah.
I think
Ali's delayed.
Ali, there's a delay in the audio. First, you have to see.
Oh, I'm not saying anything. This is like.
Oh my god. This is so,
Ali, a little bit delayed. Like 5-6 seconds.
Maybe
but
go. Maybe end the Skype and then come back in. Okay. But.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I'll come back.
Yeah, come back. All right. So, can I talk now? All right.
Yeah.
So, I suggest first figuring out if they want to talk about it, right? Before you talk to them, right? Just see if. Maybe it's not well. The first step is to see who wants to have a conversation. The worst thing you could do is make somebody feel uncomfortable. I mean, we do want to reach out to people, but we want to reach out to people that are okay with us. I mean, I don't want to force any content on people, right? Like when we put our content on our website and our YouTube and our Facebook page and our then people come and find us, it's them coming to us. But if it's in a workplace area and then you're going out to somebody and talking to them about something, I think maybe now they're not in a position to not hear your opinions, right? So first establish first make it known, maybe ask is that, hey, I have some questions. Are you comfortable with me talking to you about it? And if not, then just don't talk about it. What do you think? Is that fair? I don't think. All right, good. This next question. Where's Ali?
I'm here.
Oh, yeah, you're
Can
here.
you hear me?
You're very small. I have to make you bigger here.
Hey, what the? That's personal.
All right.
Yeah, no,
all right, next question.
Harris is saying, Harris Sultan, who's also one of my favorite guys nowadays. Abdullah Sameer, what are your views on our friend Flying Donkey? Something I don't know.
What was the question again?
It's an inside joke. He's we had a friendly disagreement about. It goes back to a lot of the things we were discussing about, certain topics which I think, which we disagreed on whether it's a good topic to bring up, like the pedophile thing. For example, Burak, one of the common things non-Muslims will say is, you guys believe in a flying donkey, ha, 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 like that, right? So we had a disagreement, me and Harris Sultan, about this topic. But I think we actually agree more than we disagree. And there is a point where you can make that point and you can say Muslims believe in a flying donkey. But I do feel a lot of times the point is kind of lost because from my perspective, it's no different than saying, it's funny to me, especially when a Christian says you guys believe in a flying donkey, because you guys believe in the Lord of the universe, killing himself on the cross, or something like you can come up with so many absurdities.
Right.
All of it is
all of it is like
snakes,
that, right?
rib,
exactly.
Living inside a fish.
Yeah, there's so many things, and so the flying donkey thing, it's kind of like ha ha, it's so easy to pick on.
Right.
But it's like technically God could do that if he wanted to. So I don't see it as a good point because it's one of the consequences of believing in the religion. It's not like a point of faith per se. So I just feel like it's not the best point to use, but it has its uses. Let's put it like that.
Muskel is saying, when Muslims leave Islam, do any of them still hold on to any of their Muslim culture and old beliefs? When I decided to not care about being Catholic anymore, I never pay any attention to religion. After becoming an atheist, I now say religion is poison and very cultist. It depends on people. I know some Muslims that are not Muslim anymore. They're ex-Muslim, and they still want to do. Less. I would say less Muslims want to keep anything cultural about Islam. I notice a lot of Jewish people that don't believe still more than anybody else keeps part of the culture. Christians mostly keep Christmas and some other stuff. Some of them still go to church even though they don't believe. But I think Muslims have been more hurt by Islam, I think. And I think the bad experience Muslims have with Islam makes less Muslims want to keep any of their experience. But there are still some Muslims that want to keep part of the culture. But I think I've seen it less than other people that leave religion. And we even know Muslims ex-Muslims that can't even stand anything Islamic, right? Remember Yasmin, when she was hearing Quranic verses, she would actually cover her ears because she couldn't actually hear it, right? When I became an ex-Muslim, I didn't want to have anything Islamic at all would just gross me out. It was disgusting experience. But then after a couple of years, I now go back and now I enjoy it as history and, but I think it really depends, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to add something really quick to that, and I'm going to reference again Phil Zuckerman, who wrote a book called Faith No More: Why People Reject Religion. And he talked about, and I've mentioned this here before, he talked about mild apostasy versus transformative apostasy. Mild apostasy is something like me. I had generally an accepting family, so I still take part in Eid. I still take part in parts of Ramadan. I still, my wife and I still go to Jamaat Khana sometimes because, she came from that tradition, has a similar family background. But we are privileged. There are many other people, like Armin said, Yasmin, for instance, who came from a background of transformative apostasy, where they were oppressed by the religion. They were forced to starve during Ramadan and fast. They were forced to pray. They were beaten and so on. And they're triggered by those memories, and they don't want to have anything to do with it. So there's a lot of diversity among ex-Muslim experience.
Last question by Kirill. Abdullah.
Wait, Abdullah, do you have anything to say to that? Or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody, and I do feel like if you're living in a majority non-Muslim country, you're much less likely to be doing the cultural things of Islam per se. I just saw a comment by Harris. Yeah, so like I'd say, like, honestly, it varies from person to person. There's no harm in it, like, if you feel okay with it. I do think that when people leave Islam, sometimes they feel so traumatized by it that they want nothing to do with it, and I feel like, it's kind of probably a natural thing that happens. And eventually, as time goes by, you kind of calm down a bit and you're like, okay, it's fine. At the end of the world, if someone says, ya hamakullah, whatever, like, it's not the end of the world, whatever.
Okay.
Like, part of, yeah.
Harris Sultan is saying Abdullah Sameer still has some Muslim in him. He said he still washes his ass. Actually, I think that's the only good thing about Islam. I still can't, to this day, I still can't believe that people don't, just only wipe. But
I agree. Yeah, the water, it's important. You got to get some water in there, especially if you're a little hirsute.
Basically, actually, that's the only good thing that we kept from Islam, I think. Kirill is asking, Abdullah, did any of your family cut ties with you when you left Islam? And if yes, how did you deal with it?
So I have a longer kind of explanation on my blog. If you want to check it out, because we're kind of running late now and I'm falling asleep. But yeah, it's on abdullahsameer.com if anyone wants to check it out. But in a nutshell, just quickly, I'm lucky. Most of my family is very liberal, and nobody cut ties with me. So I'm very lucky, very blessed. I was able to come out openly as an atheist, and I just told them, and they were like, okay. For the most part, like, my brother is very religious, and so he wasn't very happy about my decision, and he had a hard time with it.
Is he still religious?
Yes, very much so. But other than him,
you made him religious, and now he's religious.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was involved in that. Yeah,
it's kind of interesting. I think we were talking about before how, like, all of this stuff it's all bullshit and it's all bad and stuff. But when it comes to family acceptance, I think if more ex-Muslims had families that were, even if they were religious, they were the kind of religious where they accepted them, then I think that's a good start, because that at least lets us in the room. So anyway, that's something I just thought of. But anyway, listen, we're going to, before Abdullah falls asleep, because he's been very...
go ahead. He's falling asleep.
Armin?
Where can people find you?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm obviously on Twitter and Facebook and all that, but the main way to check out my stuff is on my blog, abdullahsameer.com. So I have all my articles there, and I've sorted them by order of importance. So all the top posts, the most important arguments I think against Islam are right on the front page. So everything's there if anyone wants to check it out. Thanks.
Mike is saying, thank you for a very interesting episode. Abdullah, you are a great communicator. I'll check out your stuff. I'll check out your stuff for sure.
Yeah, we got to get you on the speaking circuit, man.
Yes.
I mean, you're very, very engaging, and so you're incredibly fun to listen.
Yeah, maybe that's the next step for me.
Yeah. We'll do some stuff. Hopefully, we're trying to get some stuff sorted together.
By the way, thank you to our patrons in the live chat. You guys are amazing. Thank you for your questions. Harris Sultan, Mike, Kirill. Oh, Ali is in the live chat. Yeah, Stephen. Is that Stephen or Stefan?
Stephen. It's the same. You still say Stephen.
All right, Stephen.
It's like prosecute and persecute.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm just bugging you.
Okay.
It's okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you, guys. And I'm going to stop streaming. This is my awkward ending again. Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.